You are listening to the Beyond Unreal podcast, episode 12. I am the White Dragon.
And this is Sir Briz.
So this was probably the most active week for development so far. Tons of changes, lots of stuff to cover. It's going to be hard to get it all in 30 minutes. But we're going to do it. Let's go straight into it. They changed the movement speed.
Hallelujah.
Yay. So I can't tell you how happy I am that they changed it. And it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, this was probably one of the most desired changes across the board. It's interesting because if you look at the people that have been playtesting the game a lot, they've pretty much gone from a few days ago saying, this is the most boring game, the movement's so slow, and it's so sluggish, and it's worse than UT3, to today saying things like, the movement's pretty good, I really like it, I'm actually enjoying the game for the first time, and so it's actually a pretty significant change.
Yeah. Now, the story about how this change actually came about is actually kind of interesting. So, the videos, people have been complaining a lot on our videos about how slow it is.
Yep. Last week was a real tipping point for a lot of people. If you watched the podcast last week, that was probably the biggest complaint we had, was about the slowness of the movement in the video and not really anything else in there.
Yes. And that video got shared around the internet quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we were seeing comments about it on Reddit, NeoGAF, some of the competing shooters out there. All of them said, oh, this just seems too slow.
Yep. So they had committed 950, and the next day they committed an up to even 960. I think that once they looked at the issue and watched some of the videos people were talking about, that it was obvious even to them, this just feels flat out slow. So a post that I made on the subject was that if this is people's first experience of the game, they're just going to uninstall the game and quit.
Yeah.
Like, it was that bad. Obviously, with the videos and the things people were saying and the fact that it was getting a lot of attention this past week, it seemed, especially because of the video of CTF that we posted, it actually got changed. And I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah. And the thing was, is as soon as they changed it, it was like night and day difference. So when we went to go and play test that night, there was so many people that were available for playtesting. We actually had both servers full playing CTF. The players that played stuck around for a long time. Before, it was like we would go in and get enough footage for the podcast, and then by that point everybody was bored. This time we all stayed up late and screwed ourselves over at work the next day playing too late. So people are actually enjoying playing the game. It was a big difference.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of comments on the forums about, oh, well, their Epic isn't really paying attention to the community. Well, would I have preferred that they had handled this issue a week or two ago? Yes. But at the end of the day, the right thing happened, right?
Yeah.
They made the change. We did the right thing on the community side. People posted a lot of videos. There was even some prototypes that had increased the game speed. And I think that it's a model for how things should work. And we just need to streamline it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect case for how you make things happen with Epic. You can't just go on the forums and make a post that says Epic doesn't listen to the community and have a whole bunch of people arguing against you saying that your attitude stinks and all that stuff, and you're going to get things changed. You have to actually show the problem happening. You have to have lots of people agreeing with your position. You have to post on the forums and post videos and talk about playing and talk about the specific problems that it's causing. That was something that I noticed with the movement speed, was that people were actually posting on the forums, here's specific problems that we have with the movement being where it is right now. When Epic actually went to look into the problem, there was, I'm sure, more than enough information for them to find on the subject.
They made
to
the
convince
decision.
themselves, what needed to be done.
I mean, it was just so obvious that what needed to be done. With all of that said, there is some argument that it should be even faster than 960. To me, 960 doesn't feel quite as fast as hardcore did in UT99. I believe that value would be 1060, and it seems like a couple of the tests people have done seems to confirm that, although I haven't seen any video that proves it conclusively. But I think that hardcore would be a good balance against some of the hit scan issues that we've had. But I don't want to change it right away. I want to learn this one first, give it 2 weeks to a month, and then we'll revisit the issue.
Yeah, but the nice thing is that it's in a range now where we can tweak it, and it feels good right now. And so after playing it a little bit longer, maybe we'll be more disenfranchised with it than we are right now. But it's such a drastic change from how it was before that it's hard not to take notice of it. And it actually feels like the game's fun right now. I mean, you can do things like wiggle. We've talked about the wiggle before. I think maybe a better word for it, because people don't like wiggle, is deke. You can kind of make quick side-to-side movements to get out of the way of things.
I call it AD spam because that's what all of the other gaming communities call it.
Yeah, and that's a common term. There's not a good word for it, right? But
strafing spam.
Strafing dynamics is something that I've said before, and right now the strafing dynamics feel pretty good. Could they be tweaked? Maybe. But right now they're in a state where it's good to just leave them there for a little while and let people get used to them and see what people think after a little bit longer.
And we should add, they also changed the acceleration values too.
Yeah.
It wasn't a ton, but it made a big difference. And it felt a lot better when they changed that. And then when you added the speed on top of it, it was so nice.
Yep.
So with all of that said, what's the next big pet peeve issue on your list?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think right now what we're noticing with all the changes that we've made to the movement is that the weapons are kind of out of whack. And so just for playtesting purposes, it would probably be nice to rein some of the weapons in and make sure that they at least feel like they're in the right range to make the game fun for playtesting purposes.
Sure. So the biggest thing that bothers me in the game right now is the weapon switch speed. It is so slow.
It is, yeah.
And it's particularly frustrating when you're playing CTF. You catch up to the flag carrier, and then you want to kill them. You can't, because it takes an hour to change your weapon.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that I feel has pretty wide support. Almost everybody that I've play tested with, and we've been actually getting into the TeamSpeak and talking in the TeamSpeak now, that's something that I hear complained about consistently. Everybody seems to agree that it should be faster. Obviously, I have a history with the weapon switch. I want a fast weapon switch UT 2004. I'm not 100% sure what the support for that is in the community. So all I'm going to say for now is the value right now is too slow. Even they changed it, and it's still too slow.
Yep. Yeah, and the thing with the weapon switch is, when we say fast weapon switch, I think we're just talking about where the weapon switch doesn't feel so constricting that you feel like you can't ever even change your weapon for fear of, you might come into a combat situation and now you have to wait a full second before you can do anything. That's how it feels right now. I think that a lot of people think when we say fast weapon switch, we're saying go back to the UT 2003 fast weapon switch, which was almost essentially instant. But I don't think going back to those values makes a lot of sense. I think there should be a penalty for switching weapons during combat, but the penalty right now is basically you can't do anything else and you're going to die. I think that it should definitely be faster than it is right now, but I don't think it should be instant.
Yeah, and I have a thread about this, and a lot of people have been saying instant like in Quake Live, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, something to the effect of that you can switch it as soon as that weapon is done reloading the next shot. And I'm personally not in favor of that, but I do like the UT 2004 values, and I would like to see those come back, or something close to it.
Yep.
So another thing that really improved things was that they changed some things with the mouse sensitivity. So these weren't actually changes that none of us could have done our own through the config values, but they changed the defaults, and a lot of us didn't realize that the X and Y sensitivities were different and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that has also played a significant role in people enjoying playing testing more this week.
Yeah.
The lesson that we should come out with this is that the input and other things like the visual clarity are extremely important, and they cannot be minor after the fact considerations. They need to be primary considerations.
Yeah.
I know that they're still working on the mouse stuff because some people believe that they're experiencing acceleration. And Epic is actually taking the time to use high-speed cameras to detect if that's what's actually going on or not. So.
Yeah, Epic's been doing great on this mouse sensitivity thing. They jumped into the forum thread almost right after the stream because somebody asked about that on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete Nepley has been just right on top of the issue, making sure that whatever people are feeling is going away. He changed a whole bunch of the defaults to make sure that the default packaged build would feel good. He's the one that's willing to set up a frame capturing studio so he can see how the mouse is moving under different environments, which I think is just great. And that's kind of the thing that I'd like to see on a lot of the issues with Epic, is that they just pounce on the issue right away.
Exactly.
I think the part of the problem is that really controversial topics, they don't want to come in and say, this is how it is, because if they come in and say this is how it is, then it kind of kills the conversation, and they kind of want to see where the conversation goes.
Yeah. But then what happens is it goes on for too long, and like with the movement speed, we were ready for it, and they weren't, that wasn't their focus yet. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what to tell Epic about how to resolve those sorts of issues, but it's definitely something that we should be aware of.
And it's hard too for us in the community because things will happen like Steve and Jim were gone from the office for vacations or whatever for 2 weeks. And so very little happened on the movement front, for example, but that wasn't something that was public knowledge. Like, it wasn't just like telling the community that things on this front are going to move a little bit more slowly now because so-and-so is gone or out of the office or whatever it is, so that people at least had the sense, well, things will still change, but they're going to be slower for a short period of time.
All right, so let's move on. Another thing that came up in the stream was they're trying to make some changes to the format of CTF. The big one is that there's a halftime in there right now. Halfway through the match, everything gets reset, essentially. Now, it's causing a little bit of controversy already.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and the thing is that I think that stuff like this deserves some playtesting. I mean, the format of CTF that existed in the past isn't necessarily the perfect format. And so it's good for them to play around with this. And, you know, halftime, I could take it or leave it. Maybe it'll work out with better messaging and some polish. But one thing that this could easily lead into is a way for you to select 3 maps to play where a halftime occurs between maps and then an overtime is calculated in and a third map is played as a tiebreaker. And, I mean, if the game included stuff like that, it would be flat out amazing. Another thing that I've been thinking about lately that would be kind of nice in that same vein of additions, so in Left 4 Dead, you could basically set up a dedicated server that had a bunch of maps that you could play, but then the players would say, this is what we want to play, and it would find a server for them to play on, and it would just switch to that map and start them playing.
Yep.
It would be kind of nice if there was a system where you could say, these are the 3 maps we want to play, find us a server, and it would just go and find a good server to play on for everybody and load up those maps in kind of a, you know, CTF competitive style.
Yes, exactly. So that if you wanted to pug or do a clan match and you didn't own your own server, the system was set up for you to still be able to run that match.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. I hope that that's where this leads to. Like, I'm glad that they're talking about changing the format of CTF because I think that that will be the end of result out of that. That being said, I'm really concerned about the way that CTF halftime is being handled right now. And it goes both ways. Joe came in and made a really great post. And I know that this post is make a lot of people mad, but if you want to know how can I interact with Epic to increase the chances of me getting what I want, this is a post that you need to read. And I want to read what he said. Quote, "We felt that all of these ideas, halftime, sudden death, better presentation, reset on cap, etc., are all good ideas and should be implemented and tested to see where they lead. So for the first one, halftime is in, and we feel it's working out well, which means unless we see some evidence that it isn't working, then it will probably stay. Simply sitting in a forum and saying, I don't think this will work, isn't what we're looking for." Now, we've definitely seen that this is true. We saw it with the dodge jump that the dodge jump, Epic just didn't buy the argument that was being made. And I think it was for some of those reasons. Whereas with the faster movement speed, a lot of people, not just us, said these are the specific problems that I have with it. They posted video showing the problems. They made their own prototypes showing interest in a faster movement speed. And so when Epic went to go and view it, it was, wow, the community is absolutely right. And they're totally all on the same page with this. We should change it, right?
Yep.
Now, the split side of the argument, though, is that Epic is really kind of stepping on the foot of the competitive community's domain here. So the format of a competitive game where you have 3 maps and you pick it, the competitive community came up with that. And that was never anything that was in the game. Now Epic is introducing changes that affects that system, basically without even really saying anything about it before they even did it. And then they're coming back and they're saying, well, unless you can prove us wrong, it's probably going to stay in there. That just doesn't seem to me to be a way to make friends with the competitive community. I think that the approach needs to change in some way. I really don't think if you introduce halftime that competitive players will use it because they want to switch maps. And I think what is likely to happen with the halftime as it's currently implemented is that for clan matches, they'll just turn it off. And they might even turn it off in pub matches because I'm noticing already that players tend to leave at halftime.
Yeah. I mean, on the halftime thing, this is just something where I feel like in a lot of cases people are thinking because Epic put some feature into the game, that's the way that it's going to be. The halftime as it is right now just simply doesn't work. There's not good messaging for it. There's no explanation of what's going to happen when you reach halftime. Even fundamental messaging things for the mechanic just aren't there. And without those, it's impossible to say whether it could work or not. The prospect of what it could add to the game, I think, is interesting. You could have somewhat asymmetrical maps without giving one side of the map a clear advantage because you can move the teams between the sides of the map. The competitive community is always going to pick the maps that they like. If there's an asymmetrical map that sucks because somebody can just dig in on one side and it makes it too hard to cap when you're on the disadvantaged side, then they just won't play that map. And I think the same is true of public servers. Like, public server admins will just leave stupid maps like that out because either nobody will play them or people will complain every time they come up. But there is potential for kind of messing up the flow of CTF by introducing a mechanic like this, and it has to be thought through. But it's wrong of the community to think that they can come into the forums and say every idea that Epic comes up with sucks, and to give no reasoning for why that's the case, or to show video of problems that it's causing. I mean, with the halftime right now, it's pretty easy to show problems. If you go play CTF on one of the servers right now, and it gets to halftime, half the people in the server leave. Mm-hmm. That's a problem that has to be addressed, and I feel like if people were actually saying this is the problem, that Epic would then go in and say, here's how we're going to message this better so that people know this isn't the end of the game. And then we can test it from there and say, here's more problems with the mechanic. And if the mechanic's not going to work the way it is, get the mechanic out of the game. But going into the forums and just saying, I hate this, it's not good, I'm not going to play this game if this doesn't exist, and arguments like that doesn't change their minds. These are the things that when people were having issues with the dodge jump, we were saying that you can't just come into the forums and say, I like this mechanic and so it should be in the game or it should be tested.
In many cases, that line of argument only solidifies Epic's opinion of it.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, regardless of how you feel about how Epic makes their decisions and the decisions that they're making, we're all kind of at their mercy, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to choose what goes in there and what doesn't. And so regardless of what your feeling is on the decision, if you want to have an impact, you're going to have to play by their rules.
Yep.
Part of that is that just coming in and saying, well, I don't like this because this is different and I liked the way that I did it, doesn't really matter. You have to look at what they have done and what is in there right now and say, this is what should change and here's why, and demonstrate it to them. So for instance, on the flow issues where this could have a problem with the competitive community, what the competitive community should do is they should organize a pug match with players set ahead of time and play a full 3-map thing and stream it and show them that, hey, having these half times in between every map doesn't work. And that would be perfectly good evidence for Epic to come in and say, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Yep.
But what's happening right now is that everybody's just saying, well, I don't like this and I'm not going to participate. And then it's like, well, great. So now it's going to be in there. Way to go, guys.
Yep. I mean, it's an issue with a lot of different topics, but I do think it's true that Epic could stand to learn a little bit more from the competitive community. There has been topics like the suicide topic where it's like people have used that across the series for specific reasons. And it would be good for Epic to understand what those reasons are. And I think people did a good job of showing videos of here's how people were using suicide and why it was useful in these different situations. And I hope that what Epic took away from those posts was suicide is a useful feature that we should try to balance or keep in the game properly, not something that we should take out of the game or ignore because we don't think that it matters. And that's happened in several topics, and it would be nice for them to take that a little bit more seriously. But really, I think in terms of competitive stuff, like the serious things that the competitive community could need are really just tools in the game itself. Mm-hmm. This is an area where UT 2004 and UT 3 were super weak. Especially at launch, UT 2004 had terrible spectating controls. The demo record didn't work very well. In UT3, demo record was basically broken for almost a year. Client-side demo rec didn't exist until I think the 2.0 patch.
Well, more so than that, there was no map vote in 2003, for instance.
Exactly.
Those sorts of things are, anyways.
And so TWD made a post on the forums about esports is the killer feature. And I think that Epic just needs to keep that in the back of their minds right now. The esports features in this game need to be super competitive. Whether they care about the competitive community or not, those are things that need to be in the game. If you look at other popular games right now, Counter-Strike Go, Dota 2, even Call of Duty, in the game, there's so many statistics and matchmaking type stuff, and I'm not arguing for matchmaking specifically, but just all these features that help add to the competitive side of the game, and those things need to be accounted for in this game.
Yes. That brings us to the next subject, because Epic has announced that they're going to be bringing out some members of the community to their headquarters for a play test session. I'm going to be going, and there is a number of competitive players that are going to be going. Mess in particular, who is pretty much the main guy that runs Major League UT at BeyondUnreal, is one of the people that will be going. Hypno and Zios have also acknowledged that they're going to be going. There's a number of other people, but they haven't outed themselves yet, and so I will not do so. But I will say that they have a very wide spectrum of players that are going to be coming. It's not just professional players, and it's not just professional players from a particular game. They have casual and professional and artists and map makers and whatnot from across the entire series. There's 11 people in total, I believe. It's going to be very useful. And I think many of these issues, like the format, this might be an opportunity for those players to show Epic how it works and what things could actually be improved. So I think they're going to get a lot out of this meeting.
I think it'll be really useful. And I did one of these during UT3, and it was actually really helpful to go and see how they're doing things in their office and to give some feedback directly to them. And we even had dinner with them, so we were able to have some casual conversation about a lot of different topics. And I think that things like this are only help. It gets the community more directly involved with the people that are working on the game and more familiar with them. My hope is that over time, they've said this isn't the last one that they're going to do. I'm sure they're going to bring more people out. So if you're feeling jealous or sad or whatever, just be nice. Maybe you'll get to go out there. They're obviously interested in bringing a wide spectrum of people. And I think it's just a good thing overall. It increases the commitment of the community, especially when they know that this is a possibility. Hopefully what it leads to is more people giving more constructive feedback to try to get themselves noticed by Epic and be able to participate in things like this.
Yes. Now, you've been to Epic headquarters before, so tell me, what was it like? What should I expect?
Well, things have changed quite a bit there. They actually added another entire building to their office space there in North Carolina. So I haven't been there since they added that whole section, so things could be completely different from when I was there. When I went there, they had their own motion capture studio that was pretty cool. It was actually quite large. They had pretty cool offices. It's a pretty cool, like, casual environment. They have playtest room that's got probably 20 to 30 computers in it, just around the outside of the wall. And you just go in there and they start up a server and everybody joins and you just have a blast. But I think that it's a good time, and it's nice to meet other people in the community so that you can put a face to different names. And I think it's just one of those things that makes the community a little bit stronger, having some of those bonds there.
Cool. Well, I will be going, and I'm looking forward to it. So if you guys have comments or things that you would like me to be aware of before I go out there, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Sending me a private message on the forum is a great way. And that even goes for just the podcast. If there's something you think that we're missing or that you think should be covered in the podcast, please let us know. As always, we always look at all of the comments and try to address them where appropriate, so please keep it up.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've mentioned, some people have criticized this show a little bit lately, and I think they're right about bringing different guests on the show and having the community contribute more to the topics and stuff. And we're totally open to stuff like that. It's mostly right now a coordination thing. We're trying to figure out what the best way to have somebody else on the show or inject somebody else into the show is right now. And once we figure that out, we'll start trying to hook up with different people. But if you guys have ideas for topics for us to discuss on the show, just throw them out there. We're not intentionally making the show into a soapbox. Yeah. We're just trying to get as much information out there as possible, explain what Epic is doing, give our input on it a little bit, and hope that it moves the conversation on all these topics forward.
Yep. Well, that's all we have time for this week. As always, we have playtesting going on every day in our IRC channel, so please come and visit us and play with us. We'll see you next week.